first got involved in the skeptical community, I thought that my main job was to help individuals hone the tools in their bullshit detector. I was mostly interested in topics like how psychic mediums trick people into thinking they talk to the dead, and why people think that the moon landing was hoaxed. I just figured that if we teach critical thinking, we can slowly root out harmful, superstitious beliefs over time. I was so naive because it turns out we can't just teach individuals how to think critically and then send them on their way. It's just not enough. And the reason why it's not enough is because there's a large, complicated, well-funded, shadowy conspiracy that billionaires have enacted to make themselves richer by destroying the public's trust in science and ultimately destroying the planet Earth, making it uninhabitable for future generations of humans. That's right. I can't just debunk conspiracy theories because of an actual conspiracy that is happening right now. I'm as shocked as you are. Remember just a few months ago when the IPCC released their report showing that it is now basically an accepted scientific fact that climate change is really happening, it's caused by humans, and it's really fucking bad for humanity? Well, it turns out those are 3 of the 5 major claims that conservative think tanks and blogs have attempted to pass around in order to stop the public from understanding the science of climate change in a massive coordinated effort that has spanned at least the past 20 years, probably more. In a juicy new study published this month in Nature's Scientific Reports, researchers trained an algorithm to sort through 250,000 documents they collected from dozens of conservative think tanks and blogs over the past 20 years. And they had the algorithm identify every piece of misinformation about climate change that it could find. And yeah, it found a lot. They sorted them into these 5 major categories of lies, which they distinguish from rational skepticism. It's not happening is claim number 1. Claim number 2, it's not us humans doing it. Number 3, it's not that bad. Number 4, solutions won't work. And number 5, climate science/scientists are unreliable. The researchers then plotted the popularity of each of these claims over time to see how the messaging has evolved between 1998 and 2020. This is helpful in a few different ways. For one, we can see how the contrarians' tactics changed along with what was happening in the real world of politics, like when the Democrats took control of both houses of Congress in 2007. And we can also see how their tactics are trending for the future so that we might be better able to counter them. They also broke the 5 major claims down into these subclaims so they could see better which of those subclaims is the primary driver of the major claim. So the data shows that the first 3 categories, which are the absolutely pseudoscientific claims of it's not happening, it's not caused by humans, and it's not that bad, were popular prior to 2010, but have been declining in recent years. My guess is that as more data came in the past decade, the science has just become completely overwhelming. Arguing that the science is wrong is becoming a fringe belief akin to flat earthers. And that's good. Remember that whenever you read about a new scientific finding and you think, well, duh, we already knew that. There's definitely a number of good reasons to do more research, even when you think you have a stone cold fact on your hands. You might find out that you're actually wrong, or that it's more complicated, or you might just add another pebble to the pile of evidence that becomes harder and harder for the pseudoscientists to ignore. Claims 4 and 5, climate solutions won't work and science is intrinsically unreliable, or scientists are unreliable, were the most common pieces of disinformation this study found. And in particular, the policy claim of number 4 really took off after 2008. Drilling down on that claim, they found that the main argument used by the conservative think tanks was mitigation and adaptation measures will be harmful to the economy, environment, and society more generally. When the researchers laid the popularity of claim number 4 out over time, they noticed spikes in that messaging at interesting points in American political history. So if you look at this chart, point A is 2003, when Senators John McCain, a Republican, and Joseph Lieberman, a Democrat, introduced the first Climate Stewardship Act, which would have capped CO2 emissions at the level they were at in the year 2000. Plus, they would have provided a scholarship for people studying climatology. Wouldn't that have been nice? That act died in committee after the fossil fuel industry funded a report that said it would have negative economic effects on the United States. Points B and C were the follow-up 2005 and 2007 bipartisan Climate Stewardship and Innovation Acts, which was essentially the same as the first act, just reintroduced to new Congresses in the hopes that one would finally approve it. Both died in committee despite vast popular voter support. Point D is the Climate Security Act of 2007, another cap-and-trade bill that would have limited emissions. The act died due to its inability to overcome a Republican filibuster after outlets like the Washington Post ran statements from fossil fuel CEOs saying that the bill would be economically devastating. Point E is the Waxman-Markey bill, aka the American Clean Energy and Security Act, another cap-and-trade bill that came to a Democrat-held Congress in 2009 and actually passed in the House. It was never even brought to the floor in the Senate after the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, wrote a report claiming that passage of the bill would lead to an energy crisis. Finally, point F is when President Obama introduced the Clean Power Plan in 2015, an initiative that provided each state with a goal of reducing their carbon emissions however they wanted. Congressional Republicans tried to block the plan, with groups like Americans for Prosperity arguing that the plan would have a, devastating effect on the economy. And Donald Trump just did away with that plan when he took office, But do you see the pattern? Every time the United States had a chance to pass legislation that the IPCC says is necessary for the survival of the human race, conservative think tanks like the Heartland Institute, funded in part by the fossil fuel industry, started talking about how alternative solutions to fossil fuels simply will not work. Speaking of who is funding all of this, the researchers took the extra step of plotting that out too. They relied on previous research that identified the major funders of climate change misinformation, and they were able to see that the more money a think tank took from those key funders, the more likely that think tank was to spread the specific misinformation that climate scientists and climate science itself can't be trusted. They also found that since 2010, more and more donors to these think tanks are using anonymous ways to donate, using things like Donors Trust, which was a fund set up for the purpose of safeguarding the intent of libertarian and conservative donors. That makes it even more difficult to see now who is paying for these organizations to lie to the general public. But, we don't exactly need the mystery machine to help us figure out that, it's probably still the fossil fuel industry. There's a lot more in this study, and it's available for free in full for you to read if you're interested. The researchers point out that the trend suggests we're going to see more and more of claim number 4, the idea that nothing we do will help stop climate change and anything we try is only going to make things worse, either economically or environmentally. The correlation between spikes in that claim and climate change bills getting shot down in Congress it's just too perfect. Why wouldn't they do more of these schemes that seem to work? So keep that in mind as we desperately beg our government to do something, anything to reduce emissions. If you hear about how gas prices will go up, great. They should go up. Gas should be more expensive. It's made from fucking dinosaurs. If you hear about how the US will be plunged into a depression because of alternative energy sources, that's a lie. If you hear that it's not worth doing something that will only prevent an extra degree of warming, that's a lie too. Money is fake and the planet is real. Whatever the cost, it's worth saving the planet. It's where we keep all our stuff.